Vivian Vance died in a really sad and surprising way. It happened just one day after she told her husband a secret she had been keeping for a very, very long time. Vivian Vance was born with the name Vivian Robera Jones on July 26, 1909, in a small town called Cherry, Kansas. When she was growing up, her family was very strict and traditional. Her mom was super religious and didn't like the idea of Vivian wanting to be an actress. Back then, her mother thought that being in show business wasn't the right thing for a proper young lady to do. But Vivian loved acting so much that nothing could stop her. She really, really wanted to perform on stage. When she was a teenager, she joined local plays in her town and discovered that performing was what she was meant to do. After she finished high school, she made a brave choice. She left her home to chase her dream of becoming an actress. She even changed her name to Vivian Vance, which became her stage name. This was a really bold and daring thing to do, especially for a young woman from a strict Kansas family back in those days. But this decision marked the start of a life that would end up inspiring tons of other people to follow their own dreams, even when other people told them not to. During the 1930s and 1940s, Vance got really good at acting by performing on stage. She worked in Broadway shows, which are the biggest and most important theater productions in America. She became known as a talented actress who was really good at making people laugh. She performed in shows like Music in the Air and Skylark, and the critics who watched her really loved her work. They praised her for being lively and energetic on stage, and for having a strong, powerful voice. All those years working in theater taught her so much. She didn't just learn how to act, she learned how to grab the audience's attention and keep them watching. These skills and experiences would help her a lot later on when she switched to working in television. Television was still pretty new back then, and that's where she would have her biggest success. Her huge breakthrough moment came in 1951. That's when she got picked by Desi, Arnaz, and Lucille Ball to play a character named Ethel Mertz on a TV show called I Love Lucy. This role completely changed her entire life forever. Ethel was Lucy Ricardo's best friend on the show. She was down to earth, which means she was practical and normal. She was also really witty and funny, and she was super loyal to her friend Lucy. Ethel became one of the most famous and beloved characters in the history of television. The connection between Vance and Ball was amazing to watch. You could really feel it when you watched them on screen. Together, they created a comedy team whose silly adventures and close friendship made millions and millions of people fall in love with them. Vance's quick, smart humor and her grounded, realistic way of playing Ethel was the perfect match for Lucy's crazy, wild energy. They created one of the most loved partnerships that TV has ever seen. Their timing when delivering jokes was absolutely perfect. Their friendship felt real and believable, and their laughter made everyone who watched them want to laugh too. But even though everything looked great on TV, Vance had some really tough challenges behind the scenes that tested how strong she was. Even though she and Lucille Ball really did care about each other, their relationship sometimes had problems. This was because of work stress, and because the show became so incredibly successful that it created a lot of pressure. Vance also had to deal with feeling bad about how she looked and not feeling good enough about herself. This was especially hard because the costume designers and hairstylists would dress her up and style her to look older and less pretty than Ball, even though in real life, Vance was only 2 years older than her. This really hurt her feelings and made her feel insecure. On top of that, her relationship with William Frawley, who played her husband Fred Mertz on the show, was really, really cold and unfriendly. Everyone knew about how badly they got along. Frawley was much older than Vance and had a gruff, rough personality. People said he really didn't like that Vance complained about having to play his wife on the show. At the same time, Vance found it super difficult to hide how uncomfortable she felt about his drinking problems. Even though there was all this tension and bad feelings between them, the two of them still created some of the funniest and most memorable comedy moments that have ever been shown on television. This just shows how professional they both were and how incredibly talented they were at their jobs. After I Love Lucy ended, Vance kept working closely with Lucille Ball on other TV shows that came after, including The Lucy Show and Here's Lucy. By this time, their friendship had grown into something deeper. It was based on respecting each other and having real, lasting love and affection for one another. When they weren't filming, Ball would often tell people that Vance made her own performances better and that she was the perfect comedy partner. Vance, on her side, always felt grateful and thankful for the opportunity that the show had given her. But at the same time, she also wanted to try other things and prove that she was more than just Ethel Mertz. Her later performances, both on television and back in theater, showed everyone just how deep and talented she was as an actress. She proved she could connect with audiences whether she was doing funny roles or serious ones. Vivian Vance's personal life had a series of 4 marriages. These marriages showed a lot about her search for feeling stable, finding companionship, and getting emotional fulfillment while dealing with the pressures of being famous and having a demanding career. Over all those years, she experienced every kind of relationship you can imagine. She felt the excitement of being young and in love. She felt the heartbreak and sadness of getting divorced. And finally, she found the calm, peaceful feeling of having a lasting partnership. Each of her 4 marriages told a different story. They showed both how the times were changing and how Vivian herself was changing and growing. She went from being a determined young actress who was struggling to find her place in the world to becoming a mature, wise woman who had learned how to balance being happy in her personal life with being successful in her professional life. First marriage. Joseph Danek Vivian. His first marriage was to a man named Joseph Shearer Danek Jr. She married him in 1928. At that time, she was a young woman who was just starting out in her theater career. She was full of big dreams and ambition, but she was still trying to figure out where she fit in the world. Joseph was a businessman, which meant he had a normal, stable job. He represented stability and a sense of normal, everyday life that Vivian found comforting when she was in her early 20s. However, the marriage didn't last very long at all. As Vivian's passion for performing grew bigger and stronger, she found herself getting pulled deeper and deeper into the world of entertainment. This was a life filled with traveling all the time, going to rehearsals, and spending long nights performing on stage. Joseph reportedly had a hard time understanding why she was so devoted to theater, and the growing distance between them became impossible to fix or bridge. Their marriage ended in divorce in 1931. This marked the beginning of a pattern in Vivian's life. Her career, while it was something that made her feel really proud, often came at the cost of hurting her personal relationships. Second marriage. George Koch. 3 years later, in 1934, Vivian married George Koch, who was a musician and a fellow performer. Their marriage was marked by the fact that they both loved art, and they understood each other because they both knew what it was like to live the unpredictable life of show business. George's creative background gave Vivian the emotional support and companionship she needed as she continued to build her stage career during the 1930s. The couple spent several years together as Vivian's star slowly started to rise and she became more well-known. But the pressures of having a career in entertainment and all the strain that constant auditions, moving to new places, and professional uncertainties placed on any marriage eventually became too much. The marriage ended in divorce in 1940, just as Vivian's theatrical ambitions were starting to lead her toward bigger and better opportunities. While the relationship didn't last, it helped shape Vivian's sense of independence and self-assurance. These were qualities that would later define her both on-screen and off-screen. Third marriage. Philip Oberon, 1941. Vivian entered what would be her most publicly known marriage. She married Philip Ober, who was an actor and director. This relationship lasted almost 2 decades, which is nearly 20 years. It was both professionally fruitful, meaning they worked well together on projects, and personally turbulent, which means their personal life together was filled with problems and drama. Philip and Vivian worked together on lots of projects, including stage plays and television shows. It was during this marriage that Vivian achieved her greatest fame when she became Ethel Mertz on I Love Lucy. However, behind the scenes, their relationship was filled with tension and problems. Ober, according to many people who knew them, was controlling and critical. His jealousy over Vivian's success only got worse and deeper as she became a beloved figure that all of America loved to watch on television. Friends and colleagues who knew them later described their marriage as emotionally difficult. Vivian had to endure both verbal mistreatment, which means he said mean things to her, and psychological mistreatment, which means he messed with her mind and emotions. Despite all the pain she felt, she stayed committed to keeping up appearances and making everything look fine on the outside. This was perhaps because she felt loyal to him, or maybe she was afraid of scandal during a time when Hollywood really frowned upon people making their marital problems public. After nearly 18 years together, Vivian finally divorced Ober in 1959. This decision marked a turning point in her life, a moment when things really changed for her. The end of that marriage wasn't just the close of a painful chapter in her life. It was a liberation. It set her free. For the first time ever, she could fully embrace being independent and taking care of her emotional well-being. Fourth marriage, John Dodds. 2 years later, in 1961, Vivian found genuine, real happiness when she married John Dodds, who was a writer and literary agent. This marriage, unlike her previous ones, was based on mutual respect, meaning they both respected each other, affection, and shared understanding. Dodds admired Vivian for her intelligence, her wit and sense of humor, and her resilience, which means her ability to bounce back from hard times rather than just her celebrity status. Their relationship was one of companionship rather than competition. This gave her the peace and emotional stability she had been looking for all those years. They settled down in Connecticut, and later they spent time in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There, Vivian enjoyed a quieter, more thoughtful and reflective life away from the bright lights and craziness of the Hollywood spotlight. She often gave John credit for bringing her true contentment and happiness in her later years. She described their bond as one that was built on deep friendship and trust. The couple remained devoted and loyal to each other until Vivian passed away in 1979. And according to everyone who knew them, John was her rock, her strong support, during her long battle with cancer. Vivian Vance died tragically and unexpectedly, just one day after revealing a secret that had weighed heavily on her heart for many years. To the public, all the people who watched her on TV, she was the beloved Ethel Mertz from I Love Lucy. She was the quick-witted, lovable sidekick whose chemistry and connection with Lucille Ball became one of television's most iconic partnerships. Yet, behind her bright, radiant smile and her perfect comedic timing, Vivian carried a burden. She carried emotional pain, exhaustion, and resentment that very few people ever suspected or knew about. Her death, coming so suddenly after a moment when she opened up emotionally and became vulnerable, shocked the people who were closest to her. It left an air of mystery surrounding her final days. Vivian had always been known as a private and introspective woman, which means she kept things to herself and thought deeply about life. To the outside world and all the fans, she seemed full of life, glamorous, funny, and always ready to deliver a perfectly timed joke or line. But her husband, John Dodds, knew there were parts of her past that she refused to talk about or discuss. In the weeks leading up to her death, Vivian's health had been getting worse and declining. She seemed more reflective than ever, thinking deeply about her life. One evening, while sitting quietly with John in their home in Belvedere, California, she decided to unburden herself, to get something heavy off her chest. With trembling, shaking hands and tears in her eyes, she whispered to him, "There's something I've never told anyone, not even you." John would later describe that moment as one filled with a chilling stillness, a scary quiet. It was as though Vivian knew that this confession, this admission, would be her final release. From years and years of emotional turmoil and pain, her secret was connected to one of the most difficult relationships of her professional life. Her intense hatred for her "I Love Lucy" co-star, William Frawley. For years and years, Vivian had remained silent and kept quiet about just how deep her animosity toward him was, how much she really couldn't stand him. She was afraid of public backlash, which means she was scared that people would turn against her. She was also afraid of destroying the show's beloved image that everyone loved. "I couldn't stand him," she admitted to John, finally telling him the truth. Every single day on that set was a battle of endurance. It was like torture. He made my life absolutely miserable. The revelation wasn't entirely surprising to people who knew about the behind-the-scenes tensions and problems, but no one realized just how deeply it had affected her emotionally and mentally. No one knew how much pain it had caused her. Inside, Vivian confessed that Frawley's constant insults and condescending attitude, which means he talked down to her like she wasn't good enough, had left her feeling humiliated and ashamed. "He called me names when the cameras weren't rolling," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "He made cruel, mean jokes about my weight, about my looks, and even about my age. I laughed on camera and smiled for the audience, but inside I wanted to cry. Sometimes I did cry, but only when no one could see me." Throughout all the filming of "I Love Lucy," Vivian had maintained an air of professionalism. She never allowed her true feelings to disrupt production or stop the work, even when Frawley's biting sarcasm and mean comments cut deep into her heart. She once told a close friend, "I played his wife on television, pretending we were happy together. But off camera, I couldn't stand being near him. I couldn't even be in the same room with him if I didn't have to be. I dreaded every single scene we had together. My stomach would hurt just thinking about it." This emotional strain, all bottled up and kept inside for years and years, took a terrible toll on her spirit and her soul. After the show ended, she continued to feel haunted by those memories. They wouldn't leave her alone. "It's strange," she told John during that final last conversation they would have. "No matter how much time passes, no matter how many years go by, the bitterness still lingers. It's still there inside me. I wish I had told him how much pain he caused me before he died. I wish he knew what he did to me." After she revealed this long-held secret that she had kept locked inside for so long, Vivian seemed strangely at peace, calm in a way John had never quite seen before. John later recalled and remembered that she smiled faintly, just a little bit, and said, "I feel lighter now, like I can finally breathe, like a weight has been lifted off my chest." But that peace was tragically short-lived. It didn't last long at all. The very next day, Vivian Vance passed away unexpectedly. The official reports cited complications from her illness as the cause, but the people who were closest to her couldn't help but feel there was something eerily poetic about her timing, something almost magical and sad at the same time. It was as if, after finally releasing her emotional burden and getting it out, her soul was ready to let go. She had said what she needed to say, and now she could rest. Her sudden passing sent shock waves through Hollywood and the entire entertainment world. Everyone was stunned. Lucille Ball, her lifelong friend and co-star, was absolutely devastated. When Lucy heard the news about Vivian's death, she wept uncontrollably and couldn't stop crying. She said, "Viv was like my sister. She was family to me. I can't imagine this world without her. I don't know how to live in a world where she doesn't exist. For years, Lucy had been aware of and knew about the tension between Vivian and Frawley. But she never knew just how deeply it had scarred Vivian, how much damage it had done to her heart and soul. She never let on, Lucy later said, her voice filled with sadness and regret. She was too professional, too proud. She kept it all inside and never showed anyone. But maybe that's what hurt her the most. She kept everything bottled up inside, and it ate away at her. Vivian's confession to her husband the day before her death gave new meaning to her life story. It revealed the emotional depth behind the woman who had made millions of people laugh and smile. Even while she herself was struggling with pain and resentment and hurt on the inside, she still made everyone else happy. Her story became a haunting reminder of something important: how fame often hides the private battles that stars endure, the invisible wounds that get inflicted by cruel words and toxic relationships, the pain that nobody sees because everyone is too busy watching the performance and the smiles. In the end, Vivian Vance's final words to her husband still echo with quiet heartbreak and courage. "I just want to be remembered for the laughter," she said softly, moments before going to bed that night. "Not for the hurt, not for the pain, just for the joy I brought to people." And perhaps that's the most beautiful truth of all, that beneath the tragedy of her passing and the bitterness she endured and had to carry, Vivian Vance will forever be remembered as the woman who brought joy to millions. She made people laugh and smile and feel happy, even as she carried her own pain in silence, even as she suffered quietly, where no one could see. Tragically, Vivian's life was cut short by illness. She was diagnosed with breast cancer in the late 1970s. Breast cancer is a serious disease that affects many people. Despite her courageous fight, she fought so hard and so bravely, she passed away on August 17, 1979, in Belvedere, California. She was 70 years old. Lucille Ball was devastated by her death. She was heartbroken in a way she had never been before. Later, she remarked and said that losing Vivian felt like losing a part of herself. It felt like a piece of her own soul had died, too. The entertainment world mourned the passing of a true pioneer, someone who led the way for others. They mourned a woman whose work had brought joy to millions and millions of people all around the world. A woman whose legacy would continue to shine brightly in the hearts of fans for generations to come. Even today, decades after her death, people still watch I Love Lucy and laugh at Ethel Mertz. They still love her. And in that way, Vivian Vance lives on, bringing laughter and joy to new generations, just like she always wanted.